My dear friend, there is a harsh reality in life. Those who blindly follow the crowd will not only face the hardest blows, but will inevitably become ordinary. Why? Because they spend their days stepping on each other, tearing each other apart, competing in meaningless ways. In this modern era, everything changes with incredible speed. A few days bring small changes. A few months bring great transformations. Human perception evolves just as rapidly. In the past, the older generation believed that making money required slow accumulation, saving little by little over time. But today, many entrepreneurs can achieve in just 2 or 3 years what others would spend an entire lifetime working for. I know your life is busy. Still, what I'm sharing with you is not something that can be absorbed easily, especially not if you only hear it once. My advice is this: listen to the very end, and then listen again and again whenever you have free moments, perhaps while doing chores. Save this podcast, share it, revisit it. I can assure you, within a short time, your mindset will rise to an entirely new level. Now, let's dive deeper. Conscience, yes, that thing we often talk about can, in reality, be exchanged for money. And the more beautiful a person's conscience appears, the higher the price it can be sold for. Never think this has nothing to do with you. You may never deceive others, but you must always guard yourself against those who set traps and schemes. Let me take you back to the Qing Dynasty in China. There was once a merchant from the South Seas who offered the court a very special spice called inuhung, or 5 fragrances. When added to soup or stir-fried dishes, it enhanced the taste remarkably far more effective than MSG or seasoning powder we know today. Word spread quickly, and soon, this spice was praised in front of the emperor himself and the high-ranking officials of the court. Intrigued, the emperor's trusted minister, Hòa Thân, conducted a deeper investigation. He discovered that this 5 fragrances not only made food taste better, but also carried addictive properties. Once you got used to eating dishes with it, other foods would taste bland, tasteless, even unbearable. I'm sure by now you've already guessed what this mysterious spice was. Let's speak plainly. It was the seeds and husks of the poppy plant. Once refined, it became none other than the infamous opium. And with this discovery in hand, a vile plan for profit began to take root in Hòa Than's mind. His first move? To summon that merchant from the South Seas, offering him a high price, and secretly urging him to transport this substance on a larger scale. Let's continue the story. All the 5 fragrances that could be gathered from the South Seas were eventually brought into China. But if you think Hòa Thân merely wanted to profit by raising prices, then you underestimate the wealthiest man in Chinese history. During the reign of Emperor Qianlong, even though the empire suffered constant internal strife and foreign invasions, the capital city itself remained prosperous, bustling with life. Taverns, pleasure houses, and entertainment halls were always crowded. Luxurious, extravagant living was the trend of the times. Hòa Thân released his 5 fragrances into the market, but at an extremely low price. In no time at all, this rare spice from the South Seas became wildly popular. Restaurants began creating signature dishes: 5 fragrance chicken, 5 fragrance fish, 5 fragrance sticky rice, and so on. And then, when the timing was perfect, Hòa Thân struck. Overnight, he ordered the price of 5 fragrances to skyrocket many times over. At its peak, even 2 taels of gold could not buy a single tael of this spice. Now, imagine the panic. Tavern owners were restless and anxious. If they continued using it, their costs would bankrupt them. But if they stopped, customers already addicted to the taste would no longer come. They were trapped. Meanwhile, Hòa Than's own taverns were packed with guests. It was only then that the other business owners realized they had fallen right into his trap. But by that time, it was too late. The habit of the diners had already been formed. Unwittingly, these restaurant owners had helped Hòa Thân enslave their own customers only to ruin themselves in the process. Desperate, many taverns had no choice but to sell their businesses to Hòa Thân at dirt-cheap prices. And just like that, he monopolized the entire high-end food industry in the capital, becoming the true food tycoon of his time. But here's the irony. Even Hòa Thân himself could not have imagined that 400 years later, his trick would be revived, this time through modern technology, the internet, and digital platforms. I still remember when these online food delivery platforms first appeared. They invited restaurants with open arms, speaking with the sweetest words. No service fees, no commissions. We'll even provide benefits like ranking your restaurant based on taste, customer reviews, and visibility. Restaurant owners were delighted. They thought, this is amazing. It's like receiving free business from heaven. But over time, the truth began to reveal itself. The free cheese didn't taste so good after all. The commission that was once 0 slowly rose to 6%, then 12%, then as high as 30%. To gain more orders on the platform, restaurants were forced to spend money on promotional programs. If they refused to join, their rankings dropped. After draining the restaurants, the platforms turned to the delivery drivers, deducting their pay, penalizing them, squeezing every cent they could. And to avoid responsibility, they eventually changed the employment model itself, from hiring workers to calling them partners. Now, you might ask, how could these platforms do whatever they wanted? The truth is, the first story already gave us the answer. Just like the diners who had grown addicted to the 5 fragrances, once habits are formed, people are no longer free. Dependency gives birth to power, and power gives rise to control. Just as diners became addicted to food cooked with the 5 fragrances, today, when people get used to opening a food delivery app every time they feel hungry, that app gains absolute authority in the market. The trap is always set in 2 stages. In the first stage, you are given benefits. You feel as though you are gaining something, and without realizing it, you help them cultivate a habit within you. Then, once the habit is firmly established and the timing is ripe, they begin harvesting from you shamelessly and without restraint. So, how can this trap be broken? Let me share a few ideas. The rest, I will leave for you to reflect on yourself. Think of the marketplace as a vast fishing pond. In this pond, some people throw bait, some cast fishing lines, and others drag nets. But here's the question. Who said that if I tasted your bait, I must also bite your hook? If someone is setting a trap for me, then I can still play along, but the moment I gain an advantage, I will immediately leave the game. Then I will look for the next trapper, take advantage of them as well, and leave once more. The key principle is this: never invest too much, never grow too attached. If the enemy advances, I retreat. If the enemy retreats, I advance. When you drop bait, I'll take a few bites, but the moment I see the hook, I'm gone. Let me add one more story here. In the art of strategy, there is a particular trick one that, if overused, can cause a character's entire reputation to collapse. People say that in one lifetime, a person should only ever use it once. The greatest general of the Three Kingdoms era, Liu Bu, is the perfect example. He used this trick too many times, and in the end, he not only lost his head, but also left behind a reputation that was cursed for generations. The trick is called borrowing under the name of another, using someone else's reputation, someone else's strength, to gain temporary advantage. When I was young, reading the romance of the Three Kingdoms, I often wondered, why did so many heroes and brilliant warriors choose to follow Liu Bei, a man who, at first glance, seemed weak and ordinary compared to the others? Think about it. Liu Bei, at the start, was nothing more than a man who sold straw sandals. On what basis could such a man gather around him legendary generals like the 5 Tiger Generals and brilliant strategists such as Zhuge Liang and Pang Tong during an age of chaos and bloodshed? To put it plainly, he relied on a single label, descendant of the Han Dynasty. He insisted over and over again that he was a member of the imperial Liu family. Now remember, back then, there were no identity cards, no DNA testing. As long as a man bore the surname Liu, there would always be some who believed him. Guan Yu and Zhang Fei were no fools, but by recognizing Liu Bei as the heir of the Han royal line, they immediately had a righteous banner to rally under. With such a banner, they could raise troops, call upon heroes, and claim they were restoring order under heaven. And just like that, the image of a hero in times of chaos appeared. More and more people placed their trust in Liu Bei, and even if one day he had wished to confess that it was all a lie, it would have been far too late. The movement had already surpassed the man. Now, do you really think geniuses like Zhuge Liang or Pang Tong didn't see through the questionable nature of Liu Bei's claim? Of course they did. But by that time, the truth or falsehood no longer mattered. The label had already served its purpose. Interestingly, something similar happened much later in history. During the Qing Dynasty, there was a middle-aged man named Hong Xiuquan. He shamelessly proclaimed himself to be the second son of God, and went so far as to create a counterfeit version of Christianity called the God Worshippers Society. His lies were ridiculous, laughable even, and yet people believed him. Not just a few, but multitudes. The number of his followers swelled beyond imagination, and so the Taiping Rebellion was born. The result? Nearly 100 million deaths in China equal to the combined casualties of World War I and World War II, a catastrophe of unimaginable scale, all sparked by a single absurd lie. Truly, history leaves us laughing through tears. And so, the logic of this strategy, the trick called borrowing the name of another, can be reduced to just two simple words: recognition matters. If people recognize it, if they believe it, then truth and falsehood lose their power. What remains is the story, the banner, and the illusion that others are willing to follow. Now, when we talk about borrowing names or adopting titles, there are actually two types. The first is one-sided adoption. For example, Liu Bei declaring himself a descendant of the Han royal family, or Hong Xiu Quan proclaiming himself the younger brother of Jesus. These claims had nothing to do with reality. It was simply them claiming, "I recognize you as my father," without the other side's acknowledgement. The second type is mutual adoption. For instance, Lu Bu recognizing Dong Zhuo as his foster father, or Cao Kai-cheng recognizing Tai Shu as his adoptive father. This form of adoption is two-sided, with both parties agreeing to the bond. And actually, this second type fits our generation much better. I know, when I say this, many young people full of pride will immediately object. They'll say, "We succeed based on equality. We build success on our own efforts. We never bow down or submit, let alone recognize an enemy as family. Don't feed us these outdated back-alley tricks. We don't need them." But let me ask you this. If Yue Yunpeng had never recognized Guo Degang as his master, would he have achieved his current success? If Xiao Shenyang hadn't received the support of Zhao Benshan, would he have been invited onto the CCTV Spring Festival Gala? If Cao Kai-cheng hadn't relied on the backing of his uncle at the construction site, would he have been able to rise to such a high position? The truth is simple. Throughout history, those who rise rapidly always have a benefactor behind them. If you want to soar high, there must be someone silently lifting you. But here's the warning. This strategy, this trick, should only be used once in your entire life. If you overuse it, you risk becoming a person who constantly switches loyalties, untrustworthy, disloyal, despised. Think about it. If Cao Cao had surrendered early in his career, would he still be remembered as Wei Wudi, the emperor whose name thundered across the ages? On the road to success, bowing your head to accept a foster father or a benefactor is not shameful. What truly matters is loyalty, fulfilling your duties, and never committing evil. Now, let me share with you two higher-level ways of thinking principles often mentioned in ancient wisdom. See death, don't save, and see money on the road, don't pick it up. The first one, see death, don't save. What does it mean? It means that truly capable people are often those who keep their mouths shut. For example, when you discuss a problem with such a person, even if they see right through it, even if they know the essence of the issue, they won't easily tell you why. Why? Because they understand one thing. It is unwise to interfere with the cause and effect of another person's life. If the levels of understanding between two people are too far apart, then even if one person is helped, they may not truly benefit. By instinct, people resist and reject things beyond their understanding. Sometimes, they even end up harming others and harming themselves. First of all, this is a tremendous waste of your own energy. Once you begin explaining things to someone that go far beyond their level of awareness, you will quickly realize it is impossible to make them fully understand in just a few words. Why? Because the way a person chooses to act is built on an entire system of logic and cause and effect. One problem connects to another, one step influences the next. Unless you can explain the entire chain completely and without gaps, you cannot resolve their confusion. And even if you try, there is another danger. If the person being helped misunderstands even a single step or executes something incorrectly, the outcome will differ from your intention. They may even turn around and blame you for their failure. That's why such efforts are usually in vain, hard work, with little reward. Only fools willingly take on such burdens. Now, let's move on to the second principle. See the road, don't walk it. First, what does road mean here? The road is the collection of experiences and methods that others before us have already summarized. So, see the road, don't walk it means this. When facing challenges, we should not blindly copy existing experiences or follow ready-made methods. Instead, we must adapt them to our own unique circumstances and the objective conditions around us, and from there, carve out a path of our own. Why is this important? Because sometimes, the road in front of you may actually be a dead end. A path that everyone walks can only ever be ordinary. It is a road of conformity, a road where individuality is erased. As the writer Lu Xun once said, "From the beginning of time, anything that has always been this way is usually wrong." And so, you will realize that a person who can practice see the road, don't walk it, must first be deeply objective in assessing themselves. They neither exaggerate their abilities nor underestimate them. They must also be courageous, because the vast majority of people in this world believe that following the crowd is the safest way to avoid attack. They don't want to spend the time or energy to think for themselves. Some don't even have the ability to think independently. All they know is how to squeeze into crowded spaces, chasing after the herd. But here lies the brutal truth. Those who follow the masses will not only suffer the harshest blows, but will also inevitably become mediocre. They will step on each other, crush one another, and fight endlessly, yet never rise above the crowd. In our modern era, everything changes at lightning speed. A few days bring small changes. A few months bring great transformations. Human understanding evolves just as quickly. In the past, people believed that making money had to follow the principle of small drops make a river. You had to accumulate little by little, saving over a lifetime. But today, many entrepreneurs only need 2 to 3 years to earn the same fortune that would take an ordinary worker an entire lifetime. There's a vivid example of what we call finding your own path, or in Chinese, qian lo bo tao. Take the early era of live stream selling, for instance. At that time, the formula was simple. The more exaggerated the performance, the louder the hype, the more people watched. But if you blindly believed this was the right path and simply copied it, well, you can already guess the outcome. Because nowadays, the audience has grown tired of those old tricks. On the other hand, let's look at a familiar case from the Vietnamese TikTok market. Back when everyone was racing into live stream selling, when households across the country were joining the bandwagon, there was one figure who stood out: Kun Man Lin. Yes, he too sold products, but what he offered was different. He sold books on how to build TikTok channels and master live stream sales. That was the secret. He didn't just rely on what others were doing. He analyzed the market, understood the platform's direction, and aligned it with his own strengths. That is the perfect example of finding your own unique road. And because of that, he rose to fame quickly. So you see, choices, though they may appear simple, just one click away, are in reality guided by something deeper: awareness. There's a saying, you will never make money beyond the limits of your awareness. That means only when you expand your awareness can you truly break through in life. And since you've listened this far, let me give you a little reward. I'll share with you 5 weaknesses men often have when pursuing women. If you know how to recognize them, you can either improve yourself or use this knowledge to your advantage. First, men are impulsive and impatient. Most men don't like waiting. They want instant results. Women can use this impatience to set boundaries or requests, but don't overdo it. Because once a man feels the line has been crossed, he'll calculate, hold grudges, and may even see you as an enemy. Still, ladies, don't waste this advantage out of pity. Use it wisely. Remember, men are naturally impulsive, hot-tempered, and often lack patience or perseverance. Second, men crave praise. When it comes to relationships, here's something women should know. Men absolutely love compliments. You can directly tell a man he's handsome, even if he's not really that good-looking. Call him smart, witty, or sharp, even if he's a bit foolish at times, and he will gladly accept it. Men crave admiration, and simple words of praise can go a long way in capturing their attention. The third truth is this: men also dream. Don't think that only women aspire to change their destiny or improve their social standing through marriage. Many men, in fact, carry great hopes and ambitions when it comes to relationships. They too want to elevate their lives, to step into a different world through the women they choose. That's why a woman's intelligence, ambition, financial independence, and family background can play such a crucial role in today's society. For some men, a partner isn't just a companion, it's also a gateway to transforming their future. Now, the fourth weakness: men love to boast. The reality is, the men women often meet are rarely as perfect as they claim to be. Just as women have mastered the art of presenting themselves using makeup, fashion, or even technology to refine their image, men also tend to exaggerate. They inflate their achievements, their income, their connections. And here's the ironic twist: the ones who boast often end up more admired, more desirable, and more attractive to women, while the honest, modest men may easily be overlooked. But let's pause here. Whether you are a man or a woman, I want to emphasize this. Build from your real strengths. Yes, it's okay to polish your image, to package yourself attractively. Think of it like a product, no matter how great the content is. If the packaging looks dull or unappealing, very few people will ever bother to take a look. But packaging without quality is nothing more than deception. True confidence comes from combining both real substance on the inside and a presentation that makes people curious enough to explore further. Remember, authenticity is the foundation. Skillful presentation is just the enhancement. And now, the fifth weakness, laziness. The truth is, very few couples live in perfect harmony. Most relationships are about compromise. Two people finding a way to live together, often imperfectly, but in a way that feels good enough. Many men, when they meet a woman, don't expect perfection. They may not marry their ideal woman, but they will still choose someone who makes life comfortable enough to move forward with. This isn't just true for men with financial struggles. Even wealthy, successful men often think the same way. Why? Because searching for love, pursuing relationships, and investing in someone takes a lot of effort. And many men, especially those who are financially secure, don't want to spend too much energy on it. That laziness opens the door for women who are smart enough to see an opportunity. It creates a pathway for those who wish to improve their social standing or life circumstances through marriage. So, let's sum this up. Men want to be admired, they dream just as much as women do, they exaggerate more often than they admit, and yes, many of them are lazy when it comes to love. But within these weaknesses lie opportunities for women to understand, to navigate, and even to reshape their own lives.